On March 4th, 2026, 5:54 p.m. UTC, just before 9 in the morning Alaska time, a magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck beneath the Bering Sea. 40 kilometers deep, offshore in the Rat Islands, at the far western reach of Alaska's Aleutian chain. The U.S. Tsunami Warning System cleared it within minutes. No threat of any kind in effect. No damage, no casualties, not a single felt report from any populated area. Logged, classified, and forgotten before most Americans had finished breakfast. It should not have ended there. But when the Alaska Earthquake Center analyzed the event, one detail surfaced that the bulletins never carried. This earthquake occurred on the Aleutian Arc megathrust, the same subduction boundary that produced a magnitude 8.7 in this exact island group in 1965, a magnitude 9.2 that killed people in California in 1964, and a magnitude 8.6 that obliterated a lighthouse and drowned 159 people in Hawaii in 1946. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued a tsunami information statement, a single-page bulletin distributed to emergency managers across the Pacific Basin. One line at the top in capital letters, "No tsunami threat." Below it, a parameter block, magnitude 6.5, depth 42 kilometers, epicenter in open ocean west of Boulder Island, origin time stamped to the second, and one instruction at the bottom, no action is required. That bulletin was generated by a system built to classify tsunami risk within 5 minutes of any earthquake on this arc. 5 minutes to decide whether communities from Dutch Harbor to Crescent City to Honolulu need to evacuate or stay put. The speed of that call depends entirely on real-time seismic data from monitoring stations along the Aleutian chain, many of them planted in exactly the remote islands where this earthquake struck. The bulletin does not mention that 9 of those stations lost their federal funding months ago, or that Alaska's state seismologist has warned publicly that the cuts create dangerous blind spots in detection. It just prints its verdict in clean capital letters and moves on. To understand how the Aleutian subduction zone arrived here, watch the timeline accelerate. March 4th, 2:54 UTC, 15 hours before the main shock. A magnitude 4.5 fires near Bull Deer Island at 15 kilometers depth, and the Alaska Earthquake Center logs it without any public bulletin. By 17:54 UTC, the magnitude 6.4 ruptures at 40 kilometers on the megathrust, and within minutes, the system clears the event. The Alaska Earthquake Center posts its solution, MWWW 6.4, thrust faulting on the Aleutian Arc, Rat Islands group. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center locks a slightly different answer, magnitude 6.5, depth 42 kilometers. The gap draws no comment from either agency. An hour later, at 19:04 UTC, a magnitude 4.6 aftershock fires at just 10 kilometers, shallower, closer to the trench, inside the same segment. No updated bulletin, no coverage, no follow-up places this earthquake in the context of an island group where a magnitude 8.7 ruptured 600 kilometers of the boundary in 1965. No wire service runs a story. The event cycles off every feed before close of business, and the subduction zone beneath the Rat Islands does not. But that was only the beginning. The Aleutian Arc is not a fault line, it is a trench, a subduction boundary curving 3,000 kilometers across the North Pacific from the Gulf of Alaska to the Kamchatka Peninsula, where the Pacific Plate is being driven beneath the North American Plate. This arc has produced 6 earthquakes of magnitude 8.3 or greater since 1900, together rupturing nearly the entire shallow megathrust. Convergence is not uniform along the arc. Near the Alaska Peninsula, it runs roughly 60 millimeters per year. At the Rat Islands, it climbs past 76. Faster convergence, more strain per decade, more energy locked into the plate interface. Last Tuesday's M6.4 fired directly inside that gradient. Watch how this subduction system works. The Pacific Plate drives northwest into the North American Plate at the Aleutian Trench, and because it is older and denser, it bends into the mantle. The descending slab drags against the plate above, locking along the contact zone, and building friction across segments hundreds of kilometers long. Pressure loads for decades with no release, and when a lock segment finally breaks, the overriding plate snaps upward, displacing the ocean floor and launching a tsunami across the Pacific at over 800 kilometers per hour. But here is what the data actually showed. The March 4th event ruptured at 40 kilometers depth, on or near the plate interface, in the same segment that produced the 1965 M8.7. Convergence here exceeds 76 millimeters per year. A Bayesian hazard study puts the probability of magnitude 9.0 or greater along this arc at 6.5 to 12% in the next 50 years. And NOAA's own guidance warns that a local tsunami can reach nearby Alaskan communities in under an hour, meaning the warning window depends entirely on how fast seismic stations detect the event. Here is the problem not making headlines. In September 2025, NOAA cut funding for 9 seismic monitoring stations, most of them in the Aleutian Islands. The contract, worth $300,000 a year, had fed real-time data to the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, for nearly 2 decades. Michael West, Alaska's state seismologist, warned publicly that the cuts create dangerous blind spots in detection. Palmer is responsible for alerting Alaska, the entire West Coast, and Canada, and it is running at just over half staffing, 11 of 20 positions filled. The system that printed no tsunami threat within 5 minutes of last Tuesday's M6.4 has fewer sensors, fewer analysts, and less money than it did a year ago. And then it got worse. Because this subduction zone has already shown, within the memory of people alive today, what it does when the strain breaks through. On April 1st, 1946, a megathrust earthquake ruptured near Unimak Island, the eastern end of the same arc. And on the southwest shore sat the Scotch Cap Lighthouse, 5 stories of reinforced concrete 40 feet above the waterline. 5 Coast Guard men were inside that morning: Anthony Petit, Jack Colvin, Dewey Dykstra, Leonard Pickering, and Paul James Ness. A wave estimated at over 130 feet hit the lighthouse and flattened it to the foundation. All 5 died before any warning left the island. Hoban Sanford, an electrician stationed on higher ground, felt the quake rattle objects from his locker shelf and looked inland for a volcanic glow. He saw nothing but stars. 20 minutes later, a second shock hit, then the ocean came. When rescuers reached the site, nothing remained but rubble. The 5 men were buried nearby in graves marked with white wooden crosses. 4.5 hours later, the tsunami reached Hilo, Hawaii, with no alert. Waves tore through the waterfront, demolishing buildings block by block. When at the Lapahoho Point schoolhouse, the wave killed 25 students and their teacher. In total, 159 people died in Hawaii that morning. No warning system existed anywhere in the Pacific. The disaster was so devastating that the United States built its first tsunami warning center in direct response, the same system that 80 years later printed no tsunami threat for last Tuesday's M6.4. On Good Friday, 1964, the megathrust ruptured near Prince William Sound. In magnitude 9.2, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in North America. The ground shook for 4.5 minutes. In Port Valdez, a massive underwater landslide killed 32 people. The village of Chenega lost 23 of its 68 residents to a 27-foot wave. Across south-central Alaska, 139 died. The tsunami raced south at over 400 miles per hour, and 4 hours later, it hit Crescent City, California. 4 large waves, the 4th cresting near 21 feet. Destroying 29 city blocks and killing 11 people. At Beverly Beach State Park on the Oregon coast, Monty and Rita McKenzie were camping with their 4 children. The wave hit the beach. The 4 children were killed. Then 1965, the Rat Islands themselves. February 4th, magnitude 8.7, 600 kilometers of the plate boundary ripping open in the exact island group where last Tuesday's M6.4 fired. On Shemya Island, run-up hit 10.7 meters. Waves reach Peru, Japan, California, and Hawaii. Back at the PTWC bulletin, no tsunami threat, timestamped and filed. As of this recording, the March 4th event remains classified as routine. No follow-up from the Tsunami Warning System, no updated analysis, no statement from any agency placing the M6.4 in the context of this arc's history. The bulletin sits in the archive with its capital letter verdict, generating no discussion. Case closed, routine event on a remote arc, except nothing about this fits that filing. The Aleutian Arc has produced 6 earthquakes of magnitude 8.3 or greater since 1900. In 1946, one event obliterated a reinforced concrete lighthouse, killed 5 Coast Guard men without warning, and drowned 159 in Hawaii before any alert system existed. That disaster was so devastating, the country built its first Tsunami Warning Center because of it. In 1964, a magnitude 9.2 sent waves that killed people in Crescent City 4 hours after the shaking and killed 4 children on the Oregon coast. In 1965, a magnitude 8.7 ruptured 600 kilometers of the boundary in the same island group where last Tuesday's quake struck. A hazard study puts the probability of magnitude 9.0 or greater at 6.5 to 12% over the next 50 years. The system that classified last Tuesday's event depends on real-time data from stations along this arc, 9 of which have lost their federal funding. The Warning Center in Palmer is at just over half staffing, and Alaska's own state seismologist has warned that the next large tsunami to hit the West Coast is statistically likely to come from Alaska. The question is not if, the question is when. How do you tell Alaska's coastal communities, the ones 20 to 40 minutes from an Aleutian source wave, that the monitoring network is thinner than it was a year ago? How do you explain to Crescent City, leveled in 1964, rebuilt in the same footprint, that the stations meant to catch the next one are going dark? And if this is what the network looks like for a magnitude 6.4 that needed no evacuation, what does it look like when the next rupture is shallower, longer, and breaks across a segment that last moved in 1965? The PTWC bulletin for March 4th is still in that archive. 1 page, no tsunami threat in clean capital letters. The bulletin does not tell you how many sensors were listening when it made that call. The bulletin kept printing. The stations keeping it accurate were never guaranteed to do the same.